Okay, good morning. Today's an exciting day as we continue the takanot from Usha. We've done two of them, and now we're going to share the third. I'm going to share my screen, speaking of sharing. But before I do so, I want to clarify something that I misspoke on Friday. So if you even remember Friday. Yeah, exactly. So on Friday, I noted correctly that the four methods of death by court are grouped into two sets of two. So the four deaths are stoning, strangulation, burning, and sword, which is the head is cut off. So those four can be grouped into two groups of two. But I had grouped stoning with strangulation, but that was a misspeaking of Mishnah in Masechah Sanhedrin, where it's stoning and burning are the ones that are grouped together as being the ones that are the stricter ones, and therefore those who are subject to those death penalties are actually buried separately. So in any event, I just want to correct that. But we've been talking now back to, as I hope on the screen, back to our regular programming. So we've been discussing the takanot that were established when the Sanhedrin was located in Usha. Yesterday, we saw the first two, that one, there's a chiyuv, an obligation for the father to feed his children when they're minors. We saw that Tosfos highlighted the fact that when they're very minor, when they're under the age of 6, everybody agrees there's an obligation. But when they're over the age of 6, that obligation is not actually a formal obligation unless you have the funds to do so. Meaning if the person is wealthy, then they would have such an obligation. But if they're not wealthy, then essentially a father is able to say to a 6-year-old child that you have to go out on some level and make a living. Obviously, these are difficult times that we're talking about. Then the second takana was that if a man gives his assets to his children during his lifetime, his estate must continue to support him and his wife. And again, we saw that in fact that might not in fact be the halacha, because when a judge had reached that conclusion, the litigant would kiss his feet because he had done that to support him, and so that suggested that it wasn't actually. It was according to din. It was not. It was a lifnei mishuras hadin ruling, as opposed to actually a legal requirement. So in each, and so now we're going to turn to the third takana as we pick up in the middle of the third line of Ketubot Nun Amud Aleph. So in the third line, we say Amar Rabbi Ilah. So again, we have this Rabbi Ilah is going to say Be'usha Hiskinu. Now he's going to teach us the third of them. If you are going to, spend money, you should not spend money more than 1/5, and this is understood to be referring to tzedakah. And the Gemara says that we actually have, unlike the first two, here we have actually a brisa that supports it. So Tanya Nami Hachi Hamevazbez Agivazbez Yoter Mechomish Shema Yitztarech Labrios, because maybe you'll become dependent on other people. Umasa Be'echad Shabikesh Lavazbez Yoter Mechomish, and there was a person who sought to try and spend that kind of amount. And his friend didn't allow him. Umanu, and who was he? Now, this question is unclear. Is it who was he? Who was the colleague, or who was he? Who was the person who was trying to spend the money? So, in the end, they answer Rabbi Yesheva. The Amrila, Rabbi Yesheva. So the way that generally understood is that the question is sort of which guy is it? And the first answer is that, we're talking about the person who didn't allow him, and that's Rabbi Yesheva. And then some people say that it was Rabbi Yesheva who was the one who wanted to spend the money. Below Enicho Chavero Umanu Rabbi Akiva, and it was Rabbi Akiva who was stopping him. So in any event, whoever it was, but the point is that the brisa indicates that they would not allow the person to spend that kind of money. And so as a result, that is in fact, that is the halacha that is quoted, that we are not allowed to spend more than 20% of our money on the performance of positive commandments. So Amar of Nachman.
25% because of the Chumash thing, or
No, actually, it's interesting. We're gonna get the source right now for it, and the source seems pretty clear that it would be 20% specifically. So Amar of Nachman Be'itema Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Mikra. What's the source? So v'chol asher titain li aser asrenu lach. That everything that you give me, this is Yaakov talking in Sefer Bereshis before he goes out. On his way to Lavan. And so he says that everything that if Hashem brings him back safely to his father's house, so then everything that Hashem will give him, so he's going to tithe, and he uses the language of aser, asrenu lach, that a double kind of language associated with it. V'halo dami isura basra le'isura kama. Well, in second, if you take 10% twice, the first 10%, of course, is 10%, but then you're left with 90. Well, that means that the second 10% is 9. So that would mean that you would really the limit should actually be 19%. So Amar Ravashi, no, asurenu, because it doesn't say, as Rashi puts it, aser. If we take a look at Rashi 4 lines down, midulo ksiv aser lach, because it doesn't say that I'm going to take a tenth. So Havi Kamar Esrenu Karishon. So Lavasra Kikama. So going back into the Gemara, the point is that the last tenth should be like the first tenth, meaning that it means a full 10 of the 100. And so as a result, it's twice 10%. And so as a result, you end up with 20%. So that is the source, and indeed this is an important source for the limitation on tzedakah. Now there are a couple of exceptions, that if a person is extraordinarily wealthy, they are allowed to give more than 10%, and if and for negative commandments, to avoid negative commandments, you can be potentially obligated to pay all of your money. Indeed, you're obligated to give up your life for certain of the commandments. So the key is, what was that?
10% or 20%?
20% is the maximum, but 10% is what we is on some level what, whether it's a biblical requirement or rabbinical.
More than 20. You have to give 10, but you can't give more than 20.
That is essentially correct. Exactly. The idea is that you should give at least 10%, but you should not give more than 20. And again, the annually. And thank you for raising that, because let's take a look in the second Tosfos. Al Yevaz Beis Yoter Mechomish. I had meant to do it. So Mefarish B'Yerushalmi. So the question is, like, how do you deal with this, right? Is this an annual thing? Is this a everyday thing? Meaning, if you give 10% every day, so then you'll be quickly out of money. So Mefarish B'Yerushalmi. What? Well, you'll never exactly be out of money, right? That's what's his Zeno's paradox. So Mefarish B'Yerushalmi. So Yerushalmi explains Shupam Rishona, the very first time Yachol Levaz Beis Chomesh. You should take off a whole fifth of everything that you've got. And every year after that, the limit is 20% of what you have additionally. So those are additional rules in terms of income. No, that's what the revach is, right? The point is that every year you should take a look at what your revach is, what the additional income is on your overall profits, and the 20% of that is your limit on how much you should give. And so, welcome. And so that's the concept that we're talking about here, that we want to make sure that we are careful about it. Now, I will note that this amount of is also considered. There's a story about Rabbi I think it's Rabbi Akiva now, who would work every day and spend half of his money in order to get into the Beit Midrash. And the point is that how could he do that if he's not allowed to use a chumash? So there are two general answers. One is that he knew that he was going to get more money the next day. It was like he had a job that was gave him a certainty. So if you know that you're going to have more money coming in, you may be allowed to use more. Or for your own learning of Torah, you're allowed to spend more. So those are a couple of different answers of why that could be permitted in other situations. But in any event, the bottom line is that this takana seems to be valid. And now we're going to teach a reminder. And the interesting thing is that, especially it's difficult to remember this because we did this across 2 days. But the first time that Rabbi Yula taught the 3 takanot, it was taught in the name of Reish Lakish, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Bar Chanina, and then the second one was just taught in the name of Reish Lakish, and the third one was taught by Rabbi Yula by himself, not in anybody's name. So Amar Rabbi Shimi said, no, back into the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Shimi Bar Ashi, Ushmuos Halo Ma'atos Taholchos. Each teaching had a fewer number of citations as to who was the source of it. The simanech and the siman is the way to remember the order was katanim, kasvu, ubizbazu. Right. So katanim was the fact that you need to support katanim. Kasvu was the fact that the father wrote all of his nechasim to his children. Uvizbazu, that's the one about tzedakah, about spending money. So the point is that this way you can remember the specific order so that you know which one was quoted in the name of Rabbi Shlakish, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Chanina, and then the second one was just in the name of Reish Lakish, and then the third one was Rabbi Yula by himself, and so that's how we'll remember it. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak be'usha hiskenu. So now we have takana number 4, and the takana number 4 is offered not by Rabbi Yula but Rabbi Yitzchak. Be'usha hiskenu. What did they make a takana? Sheyehei adam misgalgel im beno ad shtei misrei shana. That it's important for a person to be patient with their children in connection with the learning of Torah. Rashi explains, Megalgal and Beno, it's about 15 lines in the narrow lines. Im misarev milul mode, if he refuses to learn, Yagalgal imo benachas ubedvarim rakim. You should try to convince him to learn Torah in soft words and with a nice way and as politely as possible. But mikan ve'elech yoredi molachai. But once he's turned 12 years old, so then you got to be a little bit more strict with him. And what is Yoredi Molachayev? Literally, it means he should go down into his life. So the point is Yoredi Molachayev, lirdoto biritzua. You got to bring the strap. Uvachoser lechem, and if you need to withhold food. So the point is that you need to be more strict. I don't know that we found that is actually a more effective method. It's a good way of scaring kids, but not necessarily the best way of motivating. So the point is that, but the idea here is that at some point there need to be consequences. So finding the right balance is a difficult thing. Go ahead.
It doubles back to the feeding of the kids.
Yes, absolutely. It does connect back to the feeding of the kids and whether or not there's an actual obligation. And indeed, on some level, when you turn 12, for the girls especially, then they're considered adults, so that there would be no obligation to feed the children. So you're absolutely right that there's definitely a connection here.
That's not so far-fetched.
No, absolutely not. Correct. Yep, they would
peddling something on.
That's exactly right. All right. Now, sorry, the point that was these is all not so far-fetched because at the age of 8 or 9, you were peddling stuff on the street. So in Victorian England, that was the comment that Stan made. And heck, yeah, in the 20s in America, it absolutely don't have to go that far back.
Out of the house at 13. Right?
Yeah,
But to make feeding your children conditional is quite a statement.
Correct. Well, again, context is everything, and here the context is clear that we were talking about times again. You don't have to go back, unfortunately, that far in history to find children out there working in order to help the family make ends meet. So,
Yeah.
but the question is this in fact the case that the relevant age is 12? V'hamar Rav Rav Shmuel Bar Shilos, that Rav said to Rav Shmuel Bar Shilos, "B'tzir mi Bar Shis lo sekabel." Don't accept a student at the age of 6. Bar Shis, but once he turns 6, kabel, you should accept him. Usvele ksora, and you should feed him. You should stuff him like an ox, meaning you should, get him as much learning as he possibly can. So doesn't that seem to imply? And if he doesn't do the learning, you're gonna, you're going to punish them and deal with them harshly. So yes, in fact, you should svele kisori, that you should stuff him like an ox. But you don't mistreat the child. You don't punish the child. So yes, we should try to encourage them to learn as much as they can, but and not hold back from their abilities. But we don't have the negative consequences until they turn 12. And alternatively, we can explain that actually one is about learning Tanakh, and the other is about learning Mishnah, learning Gemara. So that's the learning the oral law. And so as a result, that's the distinction. One is at 6, and the other is at 12. Mikra is at 6, and Mishnah is at 12. And Tosfos here highlights, 1 second, don't we say that the ages of 5 and 10 are the ages in Pirkei Avos? And the answer of Tosfos is, 5 and 10 are when you begin. 6 and 12, now we can understand the stuffing as being some kind of potentially repercussions, that at the age of 5 is when you begin gently to learn Torah, and if they refuse, so then at the age of 6 you begin to impose more potential penalties. And similarly, when it comes to Mishnah, you begin the learning of Mishnah at 10, and when you double that, double the 6 at 12, then you begin to enforce things.
Does yeshivas hold to that today?
No, well, I mean, some not modern yeshivas, but the old days yeshivas, they would use the rod if necessary. So
I'm talking about what age to start teaching these things.
Yeah, we begin. It's not that far off. Okay. I think we begin. Usually we begin Gemara, Mishnah. I guess we begin in third grade, which is about the age of 10. And so, or maybe that's 9, but 3rd and 4th grade. So it's pretty close. And then 5th and 6th grade you begin Gemara. So absolutely, I think that's very similar to what we do. So you maybe begin learning some aspects of Torah, I guess, in 1st grade. So that's sort of like exactly. So all right. So Amar Abaye. So now Abaye is going to make the Amar Abaye, and we have a statement of Abaye that supports this. Amra li'aim. My mom told me. Now, of course, this doesn't actually refer to his mom, because unfortunately his father passed away before he was born, and his mother passed away at the time that he was born. And so he was raised by somebody who gave him lots of good advice throughout his life, and he often calls on her and cites her in throughout Shas. And here is one of the places, and we're going to learn a number of statements that she made. So Amr Li'aim, my mom told me, Bar Shis Lamikra, that a 6-year-old is ready for learning Torah. Bar Eser LaMishnah, and when you're 10, then you're ready to learn Mishnah. Bar Tuleser Latanisa Me'es Leis, when your boy turns 13, he's ready to fast for 24 hours. Upitinokas Bar Tresar, and when it comes to a girl, it's the 12th year. So Rashi here understands that this is talking about that not when you turn 13 and when you turn 12, but rather in your 13th year, meaning the year before your bar or bat mitzvah. Then you're supposed to, from the rabbis, as part of chinuch, begin fasting. And this is based on Mishnah in Yoma that has the times that a person should begin fasting. But Tosfos disagrees with this read, and one of those opinions is that the year before you turn bar or bat mitzvah, you should fast the full fast ahead of time. However, Rabbi Yochanan in that Mishnah says that in fact you don't need to fast for a full 24 hours before you turn bar or bat mitzvah, and that at least that all you have to do is when you turn bar or bat mitzvah, that's when you can fast for the entire fast, and you don't have to just fast for shows. And so the idea is that Tosfos reads this as literal, meaning that only when a boy turns 13, and then therefore the Abaye's mother is agreeing with Rabbi Yochanan in that Mishnah. So those are two different views, but the bottom line is that there's an obligation to engage in chinuch. This is one of the Mishnayos that teach us that we're supposed to engage in education for our children, and that education is based on the abilities of those children. And so as a result, when it comes to fasting, we begin by fasting a year or two ahead of time with a fasting for a certain number of hours, and then potentially the year before they fast a full fast, and then they're ready when they turn 13 and 12 to fast the full fast as an adult. All right, but in any event, now that we've mentioned one teaching from Abaye's mom, we're going to teach another teaching, and that in and of itself, that teaching is going to lead us to another teaching that isn't from Abaye's mom, but is just about another remedy, because we're going to deal with health remedies. So Amar Abaye, Amr li aim, my mom told me, hi Barshis, if you have a child who's under the age of 6, the tarkale akbara, that akraba that was bitten by a scorpion, I guess stung by a scorpion, biyoma de mishlam shis lochaye, they are not going to live through the age of 6. So Mayasu say, what is the remedy? Mararta didaya chivarta b'shechra, that you take the bile of didaya, of this translated here as a white vulture, chivarta b'shechra, and then you mix it with beer, nishafye, and then you are going to rub it, v'nashke, and you're going to drink it. And so you do all that, and no, it doesn't sound good at all. But it is better than being killed by the sting of a scorpion. So and Tosfos here says that this is not actually the cure, because it seems like this or initial statement says that he's not going to live, period, and that this is somehow a mechanism of avoiding it. But that becomes very complicated because of the white vulture is not a kosher animal, so how could you have the bile of it? So in any event, it makes a lot more sense to say that it's some kind of cure.
Nefesh, right? I mean,
well, the point is it pikuach nefesh if you're trying to avoid something, that you don't even know whether you're going to anything. I guess maybe if you're living in a place where there are lots of akrabim, lots of scorpions, so then maybe that would be an exception.
The shot of the Gemara is that's after you got bitten.
Yeah, that's exactly how I understand it as well. And that's how Rashi understands it too. So all right, so that is a cure number 1. Now we have cure number 2. Hi barshata de tarek zibura. You got a baby who's 1 year old who was bitten again or stung by a bee. Biyoma de mishlam shata lochai. Again, they're not going to finish that first year. So Mayasu say, what is the remedy? Atzvasa dedikla b'maya. You take some of this growth that grows around a date palm tree, and you put it in water. And nishafye v'nashke, and again you rub it on the baby, on the infant, and you give the infant to drink from it. Okay, so now we've gotten those 2 cures. So now we go back to taking a look at the concept of teaching Torah. So Amar Rav Katina says, Kol hamachneses beno pachos mi ben sheish. Anyone who tries to enter their child into a Talmud Torah at an age under 6, ratz acharav ve'eino magia. It's like running after him, but you're not going to reach him. So let's just take a look at some of these Rashis on this. Hamachnes es beno, what does it mean to enter the child? So, to have the child enter something, it's lilmo Torah. So it's just, Rashi's just clarifying that it means to learn Torah. This is Rashi's about maybe 15 lines up.
I got it.
Then Ratzach Harav, you have to chase after him. What is that? Lehabruto, lahachioto. If you're trying to get your child to have a good health, so you're going to try and want to do that, but you're going to be running the Eno Migio Misukanhu Lamut Mirov Cholsho. That because learning Torah is considered such a exhausting enterprise, if you begin the learning of Torah at a young age, it's going to be too exhausting and it won't be good for the child's health. So 1 second. So Ikeda Amri, there are those who say, it's his other students that will run after him, and Rashi explains, what does it mean that the other students his friends will run after him? They will try to become as expert in learning Torah as him, but because he started early, he is going to be more advanced. Well, which is it? Is it that you're going to need to be worried about the health of the child, or is it that you're going to cause the child to be well ahead of his other peers? The tarvayu isnu, and both actually are true. Michalish v'gamer, if the child is weak, chalish v'gamer, he'll be both weak and he'll be a good student. Ibai sema, or alternatively, you could say ha-dechachish ha-debari. Is the child healthy or not? If the child is weak, well, then you have to be careful about not teaching him Torah too early. But if the child is healthy, well, then he can begin learning Torah because he has the sufficient health that he can withstand the concept of learning Torah. So, yes, that is true. That this is more about. This is just the mental exhaustion of learning Torah is a recognized thing. Yes, correct. That's exactly right. It is there is a little bit of opposite of what you would potentially expect. Okay, again, and what James said is that this is sort of inconsistent with the idea that the Torah should protect us. So. Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. So now we have our fifth and final teaching of from Usha. And so, but before we get to actually it, let's remember that there were two types of property that a woman can bring into a marriage. There's what's called nichse tzon barzel, sheep of iron. So those that is where the husband takes full responsibility to return the value of the item to the wife. So if something is considered nichse tzon barzel, the husband can do whatever he wants with it because basically he's guaranteed the wife and her family, if God forbid he dies or they get divorced, that she will take out of the marriage that amount of money. The other category is nichse malog. Nichse malog is it belongs to her. And the value, if it goes up, belongs to her. If it goes down, it's tough luck for her. But the husband, gets to enjoy the fruit during the marriage. So now, what happens if the wife sells such an item during the marriage? So so let's talk about it from a biblical perspective. From a biblical perspective, if the wife sells that, she has effectively sold her, her rights to the object in the future with the ownership today. The husband continues to potentially get the fruit of that item because, again, we're talking about a field, let's say. And so the wife says, I want to sell the field to you. And so now you've bought the field, but you don't get the fruit of it now because the husband's still getting the fruit of it.
The fruit is what? Profits?
Yeah, the profits associated with, well, usually it means literally the fruit that what grows on the field.
Oh, so we're only talking about real property, not chattel?
That is, yes, we're talking about real property. I'm pretty sure. Now, I think that you can refer to chattel also as, yeah, I think you can refer to chattel as well. As James pointed out, sheep in the wool. So, it's not only real property, but the real property makes it just a lot simpler to understand. So we're going to focus on the real property situation. So the real property. So again, James has bought the real property from the wife, and now the husband will continue to enjoy the fruit until he passes. And then when he passes, so then the field will go to James. Yes, correct. That's the way I'm understanding it. So now Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina be'usha hiskidus, in usha they made a takana, because what happens if the wife dies first? If the wife dies first, well, in this situation, right? So now again, he would potentially continue to enjoy the fruit, but if she had been alive, he would have inherited the entire property. So what we're going to say is they made a takana ha'isha shemachra b'nichsei milog b'chayei bala. If a woman sells nichsei milog property in her husband's lifetime, umesa, and then she dies, habal motzi miyad halakochos, the husband can take it away from the buyer. So that effectively, even though James had purchased effectively the post-life rights to the property, we're going to take it away. Now, presumably, James would get his money back. He would be able to get his money back from the wife's estate. But the point is that he would not be entitled to keep the field.
Would he be entitled to a profit?
No. He just gets just whatever he paid for it, he would get back. So
how can she sell?
Because you wouldn't, obviously you would pay a lower amount because you know that it's conditional. Basically, in order for you to get it, you're hoping the husband dies first. You're hoping the husband dies first, and then when the husband dies, so then it becomes fully the wife's, and as a result, the sale kicks in.
Upkeep it and make sure the fruit is growing.
No, well, you have none. The husband will be doing all that. Yes, absolutely. The husband has to work to build, otherwise there won't be any fruit. You're absolutely right. Yeah, 100%. Do you have a question also for that? Please. Did you hear James's question?
No.
So James had asked, well, what incentive is there for the husband to take care of the field? I mean, for the new owner to take care of the field. And the answer is there is no incentive for the new owner to take care of the field, because the husband's got to take care of the field, because he's going to benefit from the profits of the field, from the fruit of the field. So as a result, it's the husband's job to to make sure that the field is plowed and planted and all that kind of stuff. So that would be and what would be the incentive to do this in the first place? Obviously, hold on just a second. Obviously, the amount that James is going to pay reflects the statistical likelihood that the husband is going to die first, and then it will belong to the wife, and so the sale will go through. So that is he will change his amount of payment accordingly. And of course, if he in fact gets his money back, so then he's able to pay more, because he knows that if it doesn't work out and the death is in the wrong order, he'll get his money back, even though he won't get any interest on it. Now, Hanan, do you still have a question? Oh,
how can she sell it in the first place if he has a lien on it?
So
she doesn't
you're
really
selling it subject.
Absolutely.
You're selling, correct. In halacha, just as we have in modern law today, there are a variety of indicia of ownership, and you have the ability to sell some of them. So that is and indeed the whole concept of nichsei milog separates the ownership of the underlying field and keeps it with the woman, and the rights to all the produce, which is to the man. And each of them have the right to sell what they're holding for as long as they have those rights. And so you're absolutely right that you can sell certain rights even though you don't have all of the rights.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to have a story that talks about this. Yes, go ahead, Mark. So yes, so the husband who is getting the fruit from the field would be the one that would have to bring the seeds to the field in order to plant them. You're absolutely right. So Ashkeche Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef Rabbi Abahu. So Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef happened to meet up to with Abahu. And he was standing around people from Usha, meaning people that knew the halachas. Amr Lei, Man Mara Dishmaita de Usha, who taught this ruling of Usha? So Amr Lei, Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, it was Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. So Tana Mine, Arbin Zimnin. And he basically went over it 40 times. Vidamile Keman de Manchale Bichisse. And by reviewing something 40 times, that enabled him to have it really well understood, and he had it as if he owned it in his own pocket. Okay. So now back to supporting children. So now we're going to cite. So what did we do, right? In the end, we said that there's no formal obligation. Well, now the Gemara turns to giving rewards. So let's emphasize the good that you get if you, in fact, are the one who supports children. So let's see. So Ashrei Shomrei Mishpat Osei Tzedakah B'chol Eis. That praiseworthy are this is a pasuk. These are going to be 3 psukim from Tehillim. So praiseworthy are those are the guardians of justice who perform charity at all times. So V'chi Efshar Lasos Tzedakah B'chol Eis. Is it possible to do tzedakah at all times? So Darshu Rabbi Seinu should be Yavna. So this is rabbis in Yavna. They learned the Amrila Rabbi Eliezer, and some people say it was Rabbi Eliezer. Zehazan banavu v'nosav kishein ketanim. This refers to people who feed their children when they're small. That obviously is something that anybody who has had children knows that children eat all the time, and so as a result, you're effectively always doing tzedakah. So Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani Amar Zeh HaMegadol Yasam B'Yisoma B'Sok Beso Umisiyan. And no, it doesn't refer to your own children. It refers to if you raise other people's children, and then especially if you then enable them to get married. So if somebody does that, that's somebody who's doing tshuva, who's doing tzedakah all the time. All right, so that's pasuk number 1. Pasuk number 2. Hon va'osher beveso b'tzidkaso omenes la'ad. That wealth and riches are in his house, and his charity will last forever. So Rav Huna and Rav Chisda discussed this. Chad Amar Zeh Halomed Torah Milamda. One says that this refers to one who studies Torah and teaches it. V'chad Amar HaKosav Torah Nevi'im V'ksuvim Mishilan Lacherim. That this refers to one who writes Torah, Sifrei Tanakh, and lends them to others. The point is that by being charitable in this way, you are either by teaching Torah or enabling others to learn Torah, you are your charity will endure forever because the learning is something that is permanent. So again, this is only the first of these 3 referred to the importance of supporting children. The other 2 are, once we did 1 pasuk in Tehillim, we'll do 2 other psukim in Tehillim. So Urei vanim levanecha shalom Yisrael. So this is a pasuk which says, may you see, the children born to your children, and then peace to Israel. So how do those 2 concepts relate? So Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Kaven shebanim levanecha shalom Yisrael. Once you have children, your children have children, then you're going to have peace. There will be peace. Because once your children have children, you know that your children are not going to engage in chalitza and yibum. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani Amar, no, it's not that. But Kavan shebanim levanecha. Once your children have children, shalom al dainei Yisrael. The peace will be for the judges of Israel. Delo asi insuye. Because when you have children, so then the inheritance rights are clear. The Torah is very clear about how people will inherit. But when you don't have the children, then it becomes less clear, and you end up with court cases, and so the judges end up having to deal with it. And of course, there's a lot of fighting about inheritance. So, all right. So even in those days, that was true. Of course, even today, now you have fighting about inheritance even among siblings, which is really a shame. But all right, that ends that discussion. And now we pick up with the next quote of the next line of our Mishnah. Zemidrash Darish Rabbi Elazar L'bnei Chachamim, that Rabbi Elazar taught in front of the Chachamim, that again, that this you have it says in the Ksuba that the sons of this wife are going to inherit, and that the daughters should be sustained from the property, and that these two laws are connected. So Yosef, Rav Yosef, Kamei de Rav Hamnuna. So Rav Yosef was sitting in front of Rav Hamnuna. But Yosef, Rav Hamnuna, V'Kamar, and Rav Hamnuna taught the following: Kishem she'ein habanim yorshim elamin akarka. That just as sons only inherit from real property, kach ein habanos nizonos elamin akarka. Similarly, when the daughters are being sustained from an estate, right? We saw that there was no obligation when their husband was alive. That was what we talked about in our Mishnah. When the daughters are being sustained from the estate, it's only from real property in the estate. Well, Avish alei kule alma, everybody began getting angry. The shavik ara who the yarse le b'nei, is it only real property that sons inherit? The lo shavik ara lo yarse le b'nei, and if he doesn't have any property, the sons don't inherit it? Of course not. Of course they inherit metaltalin as well. Of course they inherit movable property. So Amar le Rav Yosef v'tilma ksubas banan dichrin ka'amar bar. Maybe he's referring to a special ksuba that is dealt with for male children. Now here, there's a very long Rashi, and we won't go through the entire Rashi. I'm going to summarize it for you. And that is that there's this idea of the following, that in a ksuba, a man could write the following to his wife. Now this is in a time where, obviously there were often multiple wives, and it doesn't even have to be multiple wives at the same time. It could be multiple wives in succession. But the idea is that this wife wants to know that any children that she has are going to benefit from the ksuva money that's associates, that's entitled, to which she's entitled. Meaning that when he dies and then she dies, or she dies and then he dies, she wants to know that her children are going to get a set amount of money that's associated with them. So, for example, let's say again, the man writes in, $1,000 into ksuva for wife number one, and $2,000 in ksuva for wife number two. And so, wife number one has 3 children, and wife number 2 has 4 children. Well, wife number 2 wants to make sure that each of her children end up with the $500 and not I had too many children there, but in any event, so 7 children into $3,000 is going to be less. So as a result, it's going to be $400 and some dollars. So she wants her children to have the $500. So that's the idea that this ksuba is, that a man can write in the ksuba specifically that this wife will get the children will get a set portion that will be associated, and that ksuba money, that commitment only comes from real property. And so what Rav Hamnuna was saying is that just as you can have in the ksuba the right to give male children a set amount from this woman, a set amount, and that only comes from real property, so too the daughters from that marriage who are going to be fed from the estate will also only be fed from real property. So Amar Le, and Rav Hamnuna says back to Rav Yosef, Mar de Gavra Rabbahu Yada Mai Kamina. You were a very intelligent man, that you understood what I was saying, meaning you didn't just hear the words and assume the worst, but rather you thought about what was being said in order to try and understand
How
it.
does that play into the Torah, right? What we've learned, that the firstborn son gets a double portion.
It doesn't.
This is entirely different.
Entirely separate, and even within that, the firstborn child could get a double portion,
even if
even in those situations. Okay, so so now we get to the next story. So now again, this is a second teaching in connection with daughters being fed. So Rabbi Chia bar Yosef, Rav zan mechite de aliyah. Rav fed daughters from the wheat of aliyah. Now, what does that mean? We don't know what that mechite de aliyah is. So Ibailahu parnasa havya, was he giving them the money in order for their dowry? That's the reference to parnasa. Umay aliyah, in which case, what would aliyah be? So mi'iluya da'av v'chedeshmuel da'amar shmuel lafarnasa shamin ba'av. That when it says chite da'aliyah, it means that they gave the daughters the amount that would be estimated that the father would have given them as dowries to enable them to get married, and that is what Rav gave to the daughter. So that would be one possible understanding of this meaning. Dilma mizoni mamashava, or when it says that Rav zan mechite d'aliyah, is it really referring to feeding them? That it wasn't for the dowry, it was for them to eat. Umay aliyah midvarim tovim shenemra ba'aliyah, and it refers to the good things, the decree that was made in some, in an aliyah where they were learning Torah, in an upper floor where they were learning Torah. To Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, ba'aliyah, in an upper chamber, hiskinu sheyehu banos nizonos minataltalin, that in the upper chamber, the rabbi said that the daughter should even be fed from movable property. So Tashma, so the question is on some level, did in fact the rabbi successfully institute that takana, that daughters be fed even from movable property? And the answer is no. Bidei de Rabbi Banai achua de Rabbi Chia bar Abba. So Rabbi Banai, the brother of Rabbi Chia bar Abba, had havu metaltali de Yasmi. He had some movable property of orphans. So asu l'kamei de Shmuel, and he came and he asked Shmuel, and he asked, like, what should I do with it? So Amar le zilzun, go support them. So my lav. So now in seconds, initially the thought is my lav limizone. It wasn't this support in order to feed them and to enable them to eat. No, and therefore it shows that this story is consistent with Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, that in fact they had this takana to feed daughters even when the property is all movable property and not real property. No, it does not mean that. Hasam lafarnasa hava. It was actually for the provision of a dowry. And Shmuel Tamei, and in fact, it was Shmuel who was going to according to his own reasoning, to Amar Shmuel, Lafarnasa Shamin Ba'ab, that when you are giving a dowry, you estimate what the father would have given if he were still alive, and then we give that amount. So Hava Uvda bin Naharda. So there was another case in Naharda, the Dun Daine de Naharda, and then there were some judges, and so the judges of Naharda, what did they rule? We'll say in a moment. That they ruled, in fact, that the girls could be supported from movable property. Befum Vadisa, Ba'agbe Rav Chana bar Bizna, and Rav Chana bar Bizna in Pubadisa also, he got the collected movable property in order to give to orphan girls. But Amar Lahu, Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman told both of them, both the judges of Narda and Rav Chana bar Bizna, Zilu Ahadru, go and return everything. Ve'ilo, and if you don't, magbina lachu la'apandaichu minaichu, I'm going to collect it from your real estate. And so as a result, you need to give back the money because you do not collect for the daughter's food from a movable property. Because in fact, the statement that we made at the beginning here, that Rav Hamnuna made, that daughters are only sustained from real property. So Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi, Sabr Mizan Mentaltale. So again, struggling with this concept of how could we not feed them from movable properties. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi wanted to institute it, and Amr Lahu Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, Milsa de Rabbi Yochanan Beresh Lakish Lo Avdu Ba'uvda Atun Abdin Ba'uvda. Here, something that Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shlokish didn't do anything about, you're going to try and do something about. So again, they were dissuaded from enabling the daughters to collect from movable property. Rabbi Lazar Savar Lamezan Mimitaltlin. Again, Rabbi Lazar had the same thought. Amr Lafanav, Rabbi Yeshimon ben Eliakim. Rishon ben Eliakim said, Rabbi Yodea Ani B'cha, right? I know you. She'ein midas hadina ta'oseh. You know that this is not the law. Ela midas rachmanos. This is just an attribute of mercy. But Ela shema yiru hatalmidim. But maybe your students will see what you're doing. V'yikbu halach ledoros, and they'll think that this is in fact the halacha. Okay, another story again confirming the fact that we don't feed the daughters from a real property. Rav Yosef. The girl came before Rav Yosef, Amr lahu, and he said to her, he told the other heirs, Havula mitamre da'al budja. You go give her from the dates that are on the mats. So Amr le Abaye said to him, Ilu bal chov hava, if it were a creditor, ki hai gavna mi hava yahiv le'mar, would you allow that person to collect from metaltalin? No, if this were a creditor of the father, you would he would only collect from real property. So Amr le dechazya levudja coming. No, I don't mean that the dates are supposed to actually be on the mats. The dates were supposed to be ready for the mats. So kola omid ligzos kagazos dummy. Well, 1 second. Anything that is ready to be cut is as if it was cut. Well, 1 second. So Rav Yosef explains, no. I don't mean that they're so ready for the mats that they're ready to be cut off this instant, but they're almost ready for the mats. So they still need a little bit of maturation on the tree. And so as a result, they're still connected to the tree. They're still considered real estate. That's what you can collect from. Tomorrow, we'll begin with a story that will show that we could potentially use movable property to support a daughter and the special situation that was involved in that case. And so
You're saying,
again, we'll see you tomorrow. Sorry, go ahead, Hanan.
You're saying you can't do it for movable property, or you
the sons who inherited that movable property are not obligated to use
not
that.
obligated, or you can't.
No, not obligated. My apologies if I say if the judges can't force. So that's what that's the can't. But of course they're able to do it. They could give if they want, but they're not obligated to do it. So in this, to answer Mark's question of who's the winner, in this case the brothers are the winner and the sister is the loser.
Right. Okay, but not only if the brothers are mean.
Yes, only if the brothers are mean. Exactly. If the brothers are nice,
then nobody's losing.
No, exactly. 100%.
Okay.
All right. See you all tomorrow, God willing.